Schöner Augen schöne Strahlen, schöner rote Wangen Prahlen, schöne rote Lippen, schöne Marmorklippen, liebt mein Gesicht. Unter diesen schönen Eilen hat mir eine nur gefallen, aber ihretwegen Fesseln anzulegen, das tu ich nicht. Ich will stets in Freiheit bleiben, meine Zeit in Lust vertreiben, auch in jungen Jahren mein Herz bewahren, voll Liebespein. Fahre hin, du falsche Seelen, ich will mich nicht um dich quälen. Willst du mich nicht lieben, sondern nur betäuben, bleib wo du bist. Jetzt hab ich mir vorgenommen, nimmermehr zu dir zu kommen, denn du bist von Flandern, liebst ein um den andern, doch was lieb ich nicht. Wer kann denken, wie es schmerzet, wenn ein anderer mit dir scherzet, mit den Augen zählet, mit den Lippen schwelt, der Zorn fällt aus. Welcome to the first episode of Liederspiel, a series that we want to establish talking about medievalism and Orientalism in German romantic song. My name is Henrike Leinemann.
And my name is Anna,
And we'll explore these themes together in dialogue. So you can read all the dates and facts about it on our blog, Liederspiel Oxford. And what we're going to do now is that I'll start our conversation off with talking briefly about how Brahms came about to set this song to music and the text behind the song. And then Anhard is going to talk about the magic that Brahms worked with a Volkslied in it. So the song we've been singing comes from a collection, Deutsche Volkslieder, a programmatic title that Brahms gave to his collection. In the late 19th century, it had become an established type of song setting to look for collections of oral poetry, medieval poetry that could be set to music. So editions of Liederbücher of the late Middle Ages, like the Lochamer Liederbuch, were around and circulating, and there had been numerous collections being edited of this oral tradition of medieval music. What Brahms does is that he puts together his own song collection and stylizes what he defines as German and as folk and as Lied. And we are exploring this one song which actually had been around for circulating in different song collections since the start of the 19th century. And it has been circulating in different versions, quite typical for oral poetry, that there isn't a fixed sequence of stanza. And the form in which Brahms sets it to music of 6 stanzas actually draws on different versions that were circulating. One of them also in Sorbian, where it's headed as a Tanzlied, dancing song. In other collections, it's labeled as die Ungetreue, the unfaithful women, Actually, there are different attributions of who is speaking. So is it a woman speaking about a man? In most versions, it's a man speaking about a woman, but what Brahms does is do a mash-up version of 6 verses that take different perspectives on love. We are going to read out to you the full poem in the form in which Brahms put it together. I'm going to read the German. Anhard is taking our own English translation, which we tried to do in the style of Goethe's third period of translation theory by keeping the foreignness of the German by and at the same time introducing new concepts into English. So, Schöner Augen schöne Strahlen, schöner roter Wangen Prahlen, schöne rote Lippen, schöne Marmorklippen, liebt mein Gesicht.
Beautiful eyes, beautiful radiance, beautiful red cheeks, brilliance, beautiful red lips, beautiful marble cliffs attract my gaze.
Unter diesen schönen allen hat mir eine nur gefallen, aber ihretwegen Fesseln anzulegen, das tue ich nicht.
Among all those beauties, only one ever pleased me, but on her account to enchain myself, that I'll never do.
Ich will stets in Freiheit bleiben, meine Zeit in Lust vertreiben, auch in jungen Jahren mein Herz wohl bewahren vor Liebespein.
I want to keep my freedom forever and to pass my time in pleasure, and during my young years to guard my heart fully against love's pain.
So these first 3 stanzas are a fairly clear-cut case of a reckless lover who is just not committing. It's full of cliches about the beauty of women in which it is presented, and full of cliches about the right to just stay free and careless. And Brahms adds a postlude to these 3 first stanzas, which mirrors this kind of surface Oberflächlichkeit. But then the mood changes, and suddenly we are at a lost lover's lament who is getting desperate. And without provocation from the text, it's suddenly lamenting about the unfaithfulness of the women. Fahre hin, du falsche Seelen, ich will mich nicht um dich quälen. Willst du mich nicht lieben, sondern nur betrüben, bleib, wo du bist.
Go away, you false soul, I won't agonize over you. If you won't love me, rather just sadden me. Stay where you are.
Jetzt hab ich mir vorgenommen, nimmermehr zu dir zu kommen, denn du bist von Flandern, liebst ein um den anderen, drum hass ich dich.
Now I'm thus resolved, nevermore to return to you. Since you are from Flanders, loving one after another, for that I hate you.
Wer kann denken, wie es schmerzet, wenn ein anderer mit ihr scherzet, mit den Augen zielet, mit den Lippen spielet, mir zum Verdruss.
Who knows how much it hurts when someone else flirts with her, targeting with his eyes, suggesting with his lips, simply to annoy me.
So, quite a different mood. It's suddenly not the male lover who takes his pick and takes or leaves, but it's rather the woman who is tormenting. And this torment is reflected in the postlude. So now Anhard is going to explore a bit more about the texture in this second postlude and what it tells us about Brahms' take on this song.
Well, as we just heard, this texture is quite extraordinary given the harmonic simplicity of the pattern. What we have in the first half is a simple C major chord, A minor, E minor, and then G major with a 4/3. And in between the E minor and the G major, we have a simple part passing harmony. So that's the sort of bed of the structure. In the second half, everything is exactly the same, apart from the fact that the first C major chord is changed to E minor, so we don't have that kind of sweet major coloration. And the left hand is obviously elaborated with triplets and bigger spacing between the first note and the second and third notes. Now, this isn't a neutral texture by any means. All musicians know that the 2 against 3, as it's colloquially known, is one of Brahms's most, some might say sickeningly sweet, others might say artificial, and others might say typically Brahmsian moments. I, for one, believe that it's one of his most, I suppose, heart on the sleeve, exuberant. Everything that's good about Brahms is located in those 2 against 3 movements. And I think actually it's really best illustrated through comparison with some of the other pieces that were composed around 1890. The Deutsche Volkslieder came out actually at the beginning of the 1890s, but sort of were bookended by the Klavierstücke Opus 118 and also the Fantasie Opus 116. Now, just as an example of 2 against 3, here's a passage from the intermezzo from the Opus 116 set. Etc. I mean, it's very, very clearly introspective. Right at the end of that same intermezzo, we have another 3 against 2 figure. And compare that with I would argue that it's all of the same mode. Now, what does that mean then for Brahms's take on this quite clearly voyeuristic at best and misogynistic at worst poem? I think that because of the redundancy, structural redundancy of the final postlude, it doesn't have to be there, and as you'll see on the blog post, most of the collections do not have a 3-bar gathering point. Because of that, Brahms is adding a little, aside or a comment on the song. I think for Brahms, he, especially in the second half of the Volkslied, he is imputing a meaning to it that is sincere, that is not this kind of begeisterter Jüngling, this enthusiastic, young, this...
Well, it's not a begeisterter Jüngling, it's a disdainful Jüngling.
Well, I still think he's very enthusiastic about his hatred towards this.
Not in the first half.
Well, in the sense that he's quite clearly saying that, he's attracted by the beauty of the woman, and ultimately she refuses him, and that's wounded his pride. But I still think he must be enthusiastic, because the first stanza says, well, beautiful eyes, beautiful marble cliffs, and we all know what marble cliffs is. It's not just marble cliffs. But I'm saying actually that Brahms is not talking about it in terms of this wounded youngster, but actually someone who's actually quite vulnerable. So not wounded by being rejected, but actually wanting to really love this woman. That's what I might suggest through the 2 against 3 figure.
I think what we can agree upon is that Brahms constructs a narrative out of really simple building blocks. So he takes something which he labels as Volkslied, but he turns it into his own tormented love's labor lost, and takes us on this journey by making the structure more and more complex.
And he sort of artificializes the song as we go through. I mean, we shouldn't have such an effectively rich accompaniment by the end of the lied. I think it goes against everything that would be simple of the folk. It really is, if it is a folk, it is, you know, a Brahmsian folk, and one that is thoroughly a sort of middle class, you know, brown carpets.
But he picks up all of the signals that also the stanza form has with its punchline, which is reflecting the dance movement of a kind of Zwiefache, where you have a different metrical structure in the last line to sum it all up, and transforms it into this narrative. Shall we play it again?
Definitely.
Schöner Augen schöne Strahlen, schöne rote Wangen Prahlen, schöne rote Lippen, schöne Marmorklippen, liebt mein Gesicht. Unter diesen schönen Prahlen hat mir eine nur gefallen, aber ihretwegen Fesseln anzulegen, das tu ich nicht. Ich will stets in Freiheit bleiben, meine Zeit in Lust vertreiben, auch in jungen Jahren mein Herz lebe voll Liebespein. Fahre hin, du falsche Seele, ich will mich nicht um dich quälen. Willst du mich nicht lieben, sondern nur betrüben, bleibe wo du bist. Jetzt hab ich dir vorgenommen,